Stop what you're doing. Close the other tabs. Silence your notifications. Because what I'm about to reveal about December 20th will shift how you see everything that's coming. This isn't some arbitrary date that you scroll past on your calendar. This isn't another day that dissolves into the background static of your routine. December 20th carries a frequency that most people will completely bypass because they're trapped in the loop of their habits, their distractions, their unconscious momentum. But you found this video. That's not random. Nothing is random. And by the end of this transmission, you'll understand exactly why this moment chose you. Have you ever experienced one of those rare moments when reality suddenly becomes transparent? When the veil thins and you can see the invisible architecture holding everything together. December 20th exists in that liminal space. It's a day when the quantum field seems to slow down just enough for you to step outside the pattern you've been running and witness it from a completely different vantage point. The universe doesn't often offer these windows. When it does, most people miss them entirely. I know what your rational mind is saying right now. How could a single date on a calendar hold any special significance? How is December 20th fundamentally different from December 19th or December 21st? And look, 6 months ago, I would have dismissed this as magical thinking, as someone trying to impose meaning onto the meaningless flow of time. But then I began noticing something, not all at once, not in some dramatic revelation. Slowly, gradually, the way your vision adjusts when you step from harsh light into darkness, and suddenly the shadows reveal shapes you couldn't perceive before. I started tracking energetic patterns, paying attention to how certain temporal coordinates seem to hold different densities of possibility. December 20th is one of those coordinates. It's a convergence point in the field. Where are you standing right now in the landscape of your existence? Not the external markers, not the role you play, or the status you've accumulated, or the numbers that supposedly define your worth. I'm asking you to feel into the undercurrent beneath all of that surface noise, the persistent whisper that something isn't quite aligned, the gnawing sense that you're operating at a fraction of your actual capacity, the awareness that you're positioned at the threshold of something monumental, yet you can't quite bring it into focus. That awareness isn't confusion. It's not some existential malfunction in your psyche. What you're feeling is your deeper intelligence attempting to break through the conditioned layers of your programmed self. It's trying to communicate that transformation isn't just available, it's inevitable. And December 20th represents an access point into that transformation. A doorway that swings open when you stop resisting what's already trying to emerge. Here's what most people fundamentally misunderstand about personal evolution. They believe it happens when they've prepared enough, when they've accumulated enough knowledge, when they've finally done sufficient inner work to deserve their breakthrough. But transformation doesn't follow that linear logic. Transformation occurs when you become receptive to it, when you release the resistance that's been keeping the old pattern locked in place, when you stop clinging to the familiar version of yourself because it feels safer than the unknown. December 20th is about receptivity. It's about meeting your own existence with wonder instead of criticism, with spaciousness instead of contraction. It's about recognizing that the consciousness that brought you to this point may not be the consciousness that carries you forward. And here's what makes this particular date so potent. It exists in this unique temporal position where the year is completing itself, yet the completion hasn't solidified. There's still fluidity, still room to redirect the trajectory. It's not weighted down with the collective pressure of January 1st, when everyone's forcing themselves to become someone new overnight. It's not lost in the dispersed energy of midsummer when attention scatters in 1,000 directions. It's December 20th, quiet, unassuming, yet vibrating with latent potential that most people will never tap into. Think back to the last time you experienced true coherence. Not happiness, not achievement, not the temporary satisfaction of checking boxes. I'm talking about coherence. That state where every layer of your being is moving in the same direction, where there's no internal friction, no voice second-guessing your choices, no part of you fighting against another part of you. When was that? For most people, it's been years, decades. We become so hypnotized by the momentum of our routines, so invested in protecting the identity structure that feels predictable, that we forget what coherence even feels like. We confuse constant activity with progress, comfort with contentment, the familiar with the fulfilling. But coherence is your baseline frequency. It's not something you need to construct or earn or manifest through force. It's what remains when you stop interfering with your own natural unfolding. December 20th offers you a chance to remember that frequency, to drop back into it, to feel what it's like when all of you is moving together instead of against yourself. Now, I'm not speaking about some abstract metaphysical fantasy here. I'm not suggesting the date itself possesses supernatural properties or that you need to perform elaborate rituals to access its power. What I'm pointing to is this: certain moments in the flow of time create natural inflection points. Moments when the usual static quiets down enough for you to perceive with clarity. December 20th is one of those inflection points. The year's accumulated noise is beginning to settle. The pressure of the approaching new year hasn't intensified yet. The external chaos dims just enough for you to hear the signal beneath the noise. The space between who you've been operating as and who you're becoming feels unusually permeable. And let me tell you something about that space, that in-between territory, where all real transformation takes place. It's deeply uncomfortable, uncertain. There's no map, no guarantee, no clear sequence of steps that ensures success. But it's also where every genuine evolution happens. It's where you encounter the parts of yourself that have been waiting patiently in the shadows for you to finally turn your attention toward them. Most people avoid this territory precisely because it activates every survival mechanism designed to keep them locked in the known. If this is landing for you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring these deeper layers of consciousness together. They'd rather remain in patterns that slowly drain their life force than risk the disorientation of change. They'd rather stay stuck in the same loops and blame external circumstances than take full responsibility for their participation in those loops. They'd rather keep waiting for some perfect moment that will never arrive than recognize that December 20th might be exactly the imperfect, unremarkable, extraordinary moment they've been preparing for without knowing it. But what if December 20th isn't asking you to have everything figured out? What if the power of this date doesn't lie in what you bring to it, but in what you're willing to let it show you? What you're willing to receive when you stop performing and start listening? We've been conditioned to believe that meaningful transformation requires massive external action, that breakthrough demands dramatic gestures, vision boards, complex strategies, 5-year plans. But sometimes, and this is what nobody tells you, the most profound shifts happen when you simply cease doing the things that keep you separated from yourself. When you stop running the programs that were installed in you by a world that profits from your disconnection. December 20th doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It whispers. It doesn't demand that you burn your life down, or flee to another city, or reconstruct everything overnight. It asks for something far simpler and infinitely more challenging. It asks you to become present, to actually inhabit your experience instead of narrating it, to notice. When was the last time you sat in absolute stillness without immediately reaching for a distraction? When did you last observe the quality of light moving across your space, or feel the rhythm of your breath without trying to control or optimize it? These might seem like insignificant details compared to your larger goals and ambitions. But here's what begins to happen when you start paying attention on December 20th. You start seeing the subtle ways you've been abandoning yourself. The automatic agreement when everything in you wants to say no. The performance of emotions that don't actually match your internal state. The interactions that leave you feeling more hollow than before they began. The visions you keep deferring to some imaginary future moment called someday. This isn't about drowning in self-judgment or shame. It's about clear seeing. Because you cannot shift what you refuse to acknowledge. December 20th holds space for that acknowledgement, without the crushing weight of needing to fix everything in the same breath. It's like finally pulling back the curtains you didn't even realize were blocking the view and seeing what was always there, just waiting to be witnessed. Drop a comment below and share. What pattern or belief are you ready to finally acknowledge on December 20th? Sometimes naming it in the field creates the first crack in its foundation. Look at the relationships populating your current reality. The people who extract your energy simply by being in your field. The ones who never inquire about your actual state, but always require something from you. The connections that feel more like contracts you're obligated to fulfill than genuine soul recognition. On December 20th, you might find these patterns becoming unusually visible. Not because the date possesses magic, but because you've granted yourself permission to see what's actually present instead of what you've been pretending is there. And then there are those other humans, the ones whose messages create a genuine smile before you even open them. The conversations that amplify your energy instead of depleting it. The relationships that feel like remembering who you actually are. December 20th might illuminate how rarely you prioritize these resonant connections, how often you choose familiar patterns of dysfunction over unfamiliar states of peace. Here's something that most people never grasp about significant dates and moments of clarity. They don't generate new information about your existence. They reveal information that's been present all along, just buried beneath layers of distraction and denial. That persistent restlessness moving through you, it's not evidence that something's wrong with you or proof that you're ungrateful. It's your authentic self attempting to get your attention, sending you signals that you've expanded beyond something that once served your evolution but no longer does. That persistent question in your awareness about whether you're walking the right path. That's not anxiety or neurotic self-doubt. It's wisdom recognizing that the path you're currently following was chosen by a previous version of you who was operating with different information, different fears, different dreams. A version of you who didn't know what you know now. December 20th creates conditions where these internal truths become increasingly difficult to suppress. Not because you're being forced into confrontation, but because the usual mechanisms of avoidance start losing their power. The distractions stop working as effectively. The excuses sound hollow even to your own ears. You know that thing you've been postponing? That conversation you've been avoiding because it feels too vulnerable? That boundary you've been too afraid to establish? That creative vision gathering dust while you wait for some external force to give you permission to begin. December 20th might be the day you stop seeking authorization from outside yourself and start trusting the intelligence that's been guiding you all along. But here's where it gets truly interesting. The shift isn't located in the external action. It's in the internal decision. It's in the precise moment you stop negotiating with yourself about what you already know at the deepest level needs to happen. When you stop trying to convince yourself out of your own knowing. Most humans burn enormous amounts of energy attempting to talk themselves out of what they already understand to be true. We construct elaborate justifications for why the timing isn't right, why we need more information, why other people's comfort should take priority over our own authenticity. December 20th cuts through all that protective complexity. It dissolves the confusion you've been using to avoid the simplicity of what you actually know. It shows you that the answer you've been desperately seeking externally has been sitting quietly in the corner of your awareness this entire time, just waiting for you to stop looking everywhere else. And when you finally perceive it, truly perceive it, something inside your system settles into a different frequency. Not because your external circumstances have reorganized themselves, but because you've stopped fighting against what's trying to move through you, what's trying to be born through your willingness. This is why December 20th carries significance, not because it's mystical in some supernatural sense, but because it's available, because it creates a particular quality of spaciousness. Not because it promises easy answers wrapped in a neat package, but because it generates space for the answers you're already carrying to finally surface into your conscious awareness. The question isn't whether you intellectually believe in the power of specific dates. The question is whether you're willing to show up to your own existence with enough presence to notice what's actually occurring beneath the surface level of your automated routines. December 20th is holding that question in the field, waiting for your response. Let me share something with you that shifted everything for me. There's this concept in quantum physics called entanglement. Two particles that have interacted remain connected regardless of the distance separating them. When you measure one, the other responds instantaneously. What does this have to do with December 20th? Everything. Because you and the life you're meant to be living are entangled. You and your highest timeline are already connected. The version of you that's fully expressed, fully alive, fully aligned, that version already exists in the quantum field. December 20th is when the distance between who you're being and who you're becoming collapses. When the entanglement becomes conscious instead of unconscious. Most people spend their entire lives unaware of this entanglement. They think their dream life is somewhere out there, something they need to chase down or achieve or manifest through sheer force of will. But it's not out there. It's already here, existing in superposition with your current reality. You just haven't collapsed the wave function yet. You haven't made the observation that brings that timeline into material form. And this is where December 20th becomes truly powerful. It's a day when the membrane between timelines becomes exceptionally thin. When the usual density of your conditioned reality lightens just enough for you to feel the pull of the other timeline. The one where you're not playing small, where you're not dimming your light, where you're not apologizing for taking up space or having desires or wanting more than what you've been told you should want. Think about the decisions you've been avoiding, the ones that would alter the trajectory of everything that comes after. Maybe it's ending a relationship that's been dead for years, but you keep trying to revive out of fear of being alone. Maybe it's leaving a career that pays well, but slowly kills your spirit. Maybe it's speaking a truth that might upset people you care about, but continuing to suppress it is eating you alive from the inside. These decisions create forks in the road, different timelines branching out from the choice point. Most people stand at these forks paralyzed, trying to calculate which choice leads to the better outcome. But here's what they don't understand. The outcome isn't determined by which choice is objectively better. It's determined by which choice aligns with the frequency of who they're becoming. You can make what looks like the safe choice and still end up suffering because you're out of alignment. Or you can make what looks like the risky choice and watch everything rearrange itself to support that new direction because you're finally in resonance with your authentic frequency. December 20th asks you to feel into that resonance, to stop thinking your way through these decisions and start sensing your way through them. Your body knows. Your system knows. That tightness in your chest when you think about staying in the pattern, that's data. That expansion you feel when you imagine the other path, that's data too. But you've been trained to override your somatic knowing with mental reasoning. To talk yourself out of what every cell in your body is trying to tell you. Here's another layer to this. Time isn't actually linear the way we've been taught. Quantum physics has shown us that past, present, and future exist simultaneously. What we experience as the flow of time is really just our consciousness moving through different probability states. When you make a new choice on December 20th, you're not just affecting your future. You're actually reaching back and recontextualizing your past. Events that seemed like failures or mistakes suddenly become necessary preparation for where you're heading. Experiences that felt meaningless suddenly reveal their purpose. This is called retrocausality, and it's one of the wildest implications of quantum mechanics that nobody talks about in mainstream conversation. Your future self can literally send information back to your present self. Those intuitive hits you get, those sudden knowings that don't come from logical analysis, that's often your future self communicating backward through time, trying to guide you toward the timeline where you thrive. December 20th is when that communication channel opens wider than usual, when the signal gets stronger, when you can actually hear what your future self has been trying to tell you, but you have to get quiet enough to receive it. You have to turn down the volume on all the external noise and internal chatter and just listen. Just be receptive to what wants to come through. And this is where most people fail. Not because they don't have access to this guidance, everyone does, but because they're so identified with their current version of themselves, so attached to their story about who they are and what's possible for them, that they can't receive information that contradicts that story. They filter out anything that doesn't match their existing belief system. They dismiss intuitive hits as wishful thinking or random thoughts. They stay locked in the prison of their own limited self-concept. Now, what we've explored today about December 20th and timeline convergence is just one entry point into a much deeper understanding of how consciousness operates at the quantum level. If this is resonating with you, if you're ready to master the complete system of frequency transmission and learn how to become the conscious broadcast rather than just receiving what the field sends you, I've compiled everything into Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It contains the 9 master frequencies, the step-by-step practices for moving from seeking to being, and the framework for transforming yourself from someone trying to manifest into someone who simply is the field itself. It's linked in the pinned comment below. December 20th is your opportunity to break out of that prison, to recognize that your self-concept is just a construct, a story you've been telling yourself for so long, that you've mistaken it for truth. But it's not truth. It's just one possible interpretation of the data. And if you're willing to question that interpretation, if you're willing to consider that you might be so much more than you've been allowing yourself to be, then everything changes. Let me be really direct with you about something. The version of you that watches this video and does nothing with it, that's a choice. The version of you that nods along and agrees intellectually, but doesn't actually shift anything in your behavior or your awareness, that's a choice too. And both of those choices lead to a very specific timeline. One where 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, you're still having the same conversations with yourself about why your life isn't what you want it to be. But there's another version of you. The one that actually hears what I'm saying, not just with your ears, but with your whole being. The one that recognizes this moment as a turning point. The one that decides right now, before this video even ends, that December 20th is going to be the day everything shifted. Not because of some external event or cosmic intervention, but because you finally chose yourself. You finally chose alignment over comfort, truth over familiarity, evolution over stagnation. That version of you exists right now in the quantum field, fully formed, already living the life you've been dreaming about, already embodying the consciousness you've been reaching for. The only thing standing between you and that version is the collapse of the wave function. The observation that makes it real in your material experience. And December 20th is when you make that observation. So here we are. You've made it to this point in the transmission, and December 20th is still there on the horizon, still holding that space. It's not making demands. It's not issuing threats about what happens if you ignore it. It's simply present, creating an opening for whatever version of you is ready to step through. You've received everything I have to share about this date, about the quality of space it holds, about the clarity it makes accessible. But none of this transmission matters if you let it become just another piece of content you consumed and forgot about. Another video that briefly captured your attention before dissolving back into the noise. The real power isn't contained in my words or in December 20th itself as some magical day. It's in what you choose to do with this moment of heightened awareness you're experiencing right now. And here's what I want you to do, right now. Pause this video for just 10 seconds. Take a breath and ask yourself, what has been trying to get my attention that I've been avoiding? Don't force an answer. Just ask the question and see what surfaces. Do that now. Welcome back. What came up for you probably isn't new information. It's something you've known for a while but haven't been ready to fully acknowledge. December 20th is your invitation to stop pretending you don't know. To stop waiting for more certainty before you move. To recognize that the uncertainty is part of the process, not a problem to be solved before you can begin. Maybe you'll mark December 20th in your calendar. Maybe you'll create intentional space that day to sit in stillness and listen to what your deeper intelligence has been trying to transmit to you. Maybe you'll finally initiate that conversation. Make that decision. Take that first step towards something that actually resonates with who you're becoming instead of who you've been. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll file this away as an interesting perspective and return to the familiar rhythm of your days. And that's perfectly fine. There's no judgment here, no right or wrong. But if 6 months from now you find yourself in the exact same position, experiencing the same restlessness, asking yourself the same questions, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that there was a point when you had the opportunity to pay attention, to choose differently. and then ask yourself honestly whether that choice served your evolution. December 20th isn't the only day that matters, but it's the one that's directly in front of you right now, offering you exactly what you need if you're willing to meet it with courage and openness. The question isn't whether you believe in its significance. The question is whether you trust yourself enough to recognize opportunity when it arrives quietly, without announcement, in the ordinary moments when nobody else is watching, when it's just you and the truth of what you know. Take a moment right now and comment below with this exact phrase: I am ready to see what I've been avoiding. Not as a casual interaction, as an energetic declaration, as a signal to the quantum field that you're choosing awareness over comfort, that you're willing to look at what's been hiding in plain sight. This isn't about me getting engagement on a video. This is about you consciously interrupting the loop you've been running. Say it out loud as you type it. Feel it in your body. I am ready to see what I've been avoiding. Let's go deeper into what happens when you actually make that declaration. When you consciously choose to see what you've been avoiding, you initiate a cascade of shifts in your neurobiology. Your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters information and determines what you pay attention to, immediately begins reorganizing itself. Suddenly, you start noticing things that were always there but invisible to your previous operating system. Opportunities that were present, but you couldn't perceive because you weren't tuned to the right frequency. People who could support your evolution, but you kept walking past because your awareness wasn't calibrated to recognize them. This is why the declaration matters. It's not just words. It's a command to your entire system to recalibrate, to update the filters through which you're processing reality. And December 20th amplifies this recalibration exponentially because of the energetic qualities inherent in that temporal coordinate. Now, I want to address something that might be coming up for you as you're taking this in. You might be feeling resistance. Part of you might be thinking, this sounds interesting, but it's probably not going to work for me. I've tried things like this before and nothing changed. That's your protective mechanism talking. The part of you that's invested in keeping everything exactly as it is, because change, even positive change, represents a threat to the known. Your nervous system is wired to prioritize survival over growth, familiarity over possibility. But here's the thing about that protective mechanism. It's operating on outdated information. It was installed when you were younger, when you actually needed to stay small to be safe, to fit in, to avoid rejection or punishment. But you're not that person anymore. You're not in that environment anymore. The rules that governed your survival then don't apply to your thriving now. Yet the mechanism keeps running because nobody told it to update. Nobody gave it new data to work with. December 20th is when you consciously update that mechanism. When you look at those protective patterns with compassion and say, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I see the purpose you've served. But I'm choosing differently now. I'm choosing expansion over protection. Growth over safety, becoming over remaining. And when you do that, when you actually acknowledge these parts of yourself instead of fighting against them or trying to override them with positive thinking, something remarkable happens. They relax, they soften, they stop gripping so tightly because they finally feel seen. This is the difference between spiritual bypassing and genuine transformation. Bypassing tries to leap over the resistance. Transformation integrates it, honors it, brings it along for the journey. So on December 20th, you're not abandoning any part of yourself. You're bringing all of yourself into coherence. The scared parts, the resistant parts, the parts that have been carrying shame or guilt or unworthiness, all of it gets to come along. All of it gets to be part of the new timeline you're stepping into. But those parts no longer get to drive the vehicle. Your highest self, your deepest knowing, your most authentic expression, that's what takes the wheel. And if what you're hearing in this transmission is touching something real in you, if it's activating a recognition that you can't quite put into words yet, then I invite you to subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to this frequency, to this conversation about consciousness and transformation that we're having together. To this space where we remember that we're not broken things that need fixing, but infinite beings remembering our true nature. Subscribe to stay in this field with others who are choosing to wake up from the collective trance. The path forward from December 20th isn't about having a perfect plan. It's about cultivating enough presence to notice the next step when it appears. And it will appear. Not necessarily in the way you expect, not necessarily on your timeline, but it will appear because you've created the internal space for it to emerge. Here's what I know about the quantum field. It responds to coherence. When you get clear about what you're actually choosing, when you stop sending mixed signals of, I want this but I'm afraid of this, when you align your internal state with your stated intention, reality reorganizes itself to match that coherence. Not through magic, through physics, through the fundamental principle that consciousness and matter are not separate things, but different expressions of the same underlying field. December 20th is your opportunity to establish that coherence, to get clean about what you're actually choosing, to stop straddling multiple timelines and collapse the wave function into the reality you're ready to inhabit. And yes, I'm using quantum terminology because it's not just metaphor. The observer effect is real. Your attention literally shapes what manifests in your experience. The question is, what are you giving your attention to? The old story about who you are and what's possible, or the emerging truth of what's trying to be born through you? Most people never ask themselves that question directly. They operate on autopilot, repeating patterns that were established years ago by a version of themselves who no longer exists. They keep running the same program, expecting different results. That's not optimism, that's unconsciousness. And December 20th is your wake-up call. But here's the thing about wake-up calls. You can hit snooze. You can roll over and go back to sleep. Or you can open your eyes and see where you actually are. Not where you wish you were. Not where you think you should be. Where you actually are. Because transformation begins with radical honesty about your current position. Not judgment. Just clear seeing. So as we move toward December 20th, I want you to practice that clear seeing. Notice where you're still pretending, where you're performing a version of yourself that doesn't match your internal experience, where you're saying yes but meaning no, where you're staying small to make other people comfortable, where you're dimming your light because shining might make others uncomfortable, or might require you to step into a version of yourself you haven't fully met yet. Notice all of that, without making it mean something's wrong with you. You've been conditioned to operate this way, taught that your survival depends on fitting in, on not disrupting the established order, on being who others need you to be. But you've reached a point where that conditioning is no longer serving your evolution. It's constraining it. And your system knows this. That's why you feel the restlessness, the discomfort, the persistent sense that something needs to shift. December 20th is when you honor that knowing, when you stop questioning your own intuition and start trusting it, when you recognize that the guidance you've been seeking externally has been emanating from within you all along, just waiting for you to tune in to the right frequency to receive it clearly. Let me share something else about December 20th that most people won't tell you. It's not just about what you gain, it's about what you release. And sometimes the releasing is more important than the acquiring. You've been carrying so much that doesn't belong to you. Expectations that were placed on you by parents who were operating from their own wounds. Beliefs about limitation that you absorbed from a culture that profits from your sense of inadequacy. Stories about who you're allowed to be that were written by people who never met the real you. All of that weight, all of that accumulated debris, it's been slowing you down, making every step forward feel like you're walking through thick mud. But on December 20th, you get to put it down. All of it. You get to stand there empty-handed and ask yourself, without all these stories, without all these inherited beliefs, without all these externally imposed limitations, who am I actually? What do I actually want? What does my soul actually long for? And the answers that come up might surprise you. They might contradict everything you thought you knew about yourself. They might challenge relationships you've been maintaining out of obligation. They might require you to disappoint people who've grown comfortable with the smaller version of you. But they'll be true. And truth has a frequency that your body recognizes immediately. It creates space instead of constriction, breath instead of holding, flow instead of resistance. I want to talk about fear for a moment because it's going to come up as you approach December 20th. The fear of making the wrong choice, the fear of losing what you have, the fear of disappointing people you care about. The fear of discovering that you're not actually capable of becoming who you sense you could be. All of these fears are valid. They're real. And pretending they don't exist doesn't make them go away. But here's what I've learned about fear. It's not actually trying to stop you. It's trying to protect you. And when you can distinguish between fear that's protecting you from genuine danger and fear that's protecting you from growth, everything changes. Most of the fear you're experiencing isn't warning you away from real threat. It's warning you away from the unknown, from uncertainty, from the vulnerability of not knowing how things will turn out. But the unknown is also where all possibility lives, where miracles happen, where synchronicities occur, where life surprises you in ways that your limited planning mind could never orchestrate. So on December 20th, instead of trying to eliminate fear, you're going to learn to move with it, to let it be present without letting it be in charge, to thank it for its concern and then take the step anyway. This is courage. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in alignment with your truth, even when fear is present. And every time you practice this courage, you build evidence for your nervous system that it's safe to expand. That growth doesn't equal death. That becoming more of yourself doesn't mean losing love or belonging or safety. You literally rewire the neural pathways that have been keeping you trapped in the familiar. December 20th gives you an opportunity to build massive evidence all at once, to make choices that would normally take months to work up to. Because the energetic support is there, the field is aligned, the resistance is lower. It's like swimming downstream instead of upstream. You're still swimming, still making effort, but the current is working with you instead of against you. And here's something beautiful about this process. You don't have to do it alone. There's a community of people maybe watching this video right now maybe finding it weeks or months from now, who are all moving through the same transformation, all choosing consciousness over conditioning, all stepping into their highest timeline. And when you make your declaration, when you take your stand on December 20th, you're not just affecting your own field, you're contributing to the collective field. You're making it easier for the next person to make that choice. You're part of a wave of awakening that's moving through human consciousness right now. If this transmission is activating something in you, consider watching it again tomorrow morning before December 20th arrives. Let these concepts settle into your field overnight and reinforce the frequency each day. And if someone in your life is ready for this shift, share this video with them. When you share quantum consciousness principles like these, you're not just passing along information, you're creating an energetic ripple that reinforces your own alignment, accelerates both your timelines, and contributes to the collective awakening we're all part of. This is why community matters, why connection matters, why subscribing to this channel isn't just about getting more content. It's about anchoring yourself in a field of people who are committed to the same evolution you're committed to, who will reflect back your highest potential when you forget, who will remind you of your power when you start doubting, who will celebrate your wins and witness your process and hold space for your becoming. And in these final moments before we complete this transmission, I want you to drop one word in the comments. Just one word that captures the energy you're choosing to embody moving forward from December 20th. Not what you think you should choose, what you actually feel called toward. This isn't a casual comment. It's your energetic signature to the quantum field, your declaration of what you're collapsing the wave function into. One word, drop it below. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Not just to stay connected, but to stay coherent, to stay in alignment with this frequency of conscious evolution. Because the more of us who choose to wake up, who choose to see clearly, who choose to operate from authentic alignment instead of conditioned patterns, the more the collective field shifts. Your transformation isn't just personal, it's part of a larger awakening that's moving through the planet right now. And December 20th is your opportunity to consciously participate in that awakening instead of being swept along unconsciously. Your answer will reveal itself on December 20th, not through some external sign or cosmic event, but through your own choices, through whether you show up with presence or stay asleep in the pattern, through whether you honor your knowing or continue negotiating with it, through whether you step through the doorway that's opening or stay on the side of the threshold that feels familiar.